All right, this is totally cured. We are ready to pour our next resin layer and start doing the Northern Lights on it. Now, a few weeks ago, I started swatching out some of my mica powders and some of my paints to see which one I liked best for this particular project. And it's a great way to just test out and see how your powders and whatnot are going to look on the background that you're using. This is just a tray that I got some wood cutout pieces from the dollar store. You could also use on Amazon, and I'll link it on the supply list, there's like 2x2 wood, they say, I think it was called coasters, but they're too tiny to be coasters. You could do swatches on that as well. But it's a great way to actually see exactly how your mica or your paint or whatever is going to look on your background. So I chose to use some PBO iridescent acrylic paints because I liked how it looked. So for this layer, I'm going to just use the green, and then for the next layer, I'm also going to add some pink and blue accents. So I have my resin all mixed up. When you're adding acrylic paint to your resin, you kind of need to just eyeball it. Whatever amount of resin you have there, you don't want more than 10% of it with acrylic paint. Now, if you end up doing the ratio wrong and add too much acrylic paint to it, it's going to affect how your resin sets. If that is the case, if it's really, really sticky after it was supposed to set, you could try scrape it off, or else you could add another thin coat of resin on top of it to enclose it, and that's the way to fix it. So I've got that mixed right there. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I have my table protected with a, it's just a cheap shower curtain from the dollar store. And that way any of the resin that drips off of my piece, I can just peel it right off of this and toss it. And I just can reuse this over and over again. After a while, sometimes it does start to tear the shower curtain, and I just, once it gets too bad, I'll just replace it with a new one. So you don't need anything expensive to protect your work surface. So I've got my resin measured and mixed here, and we are ready to just, I'm going to add a clear coat first, and then I'm going to add the one with the paint mixed in it. Between that though, I am going to pop the bubbles. I want to make sure to pop all the bubbles before adding my Northern Lights, because I want to be able to move it a little bit, but I don't want it to move a lot. And if I pour it first and then pop the bubbles, I can't control how much it's going to move as much as if I hold off for a minute. So same as last layer, I'm making sure it is spread all over the front evenly, make sure there's not any missing areas, and then I make sure that it is going over the sides. And it's really easy to feel where there's resin and where there's not. It's kind of slippery, so as soon as you hit a piece that doesn't have resin on it, you can just feel it. I'm going to take my glove off to use my heat gun. Keeping it on one hand just in case I need to touch something. Once again, just removing all of the bubbles. So there's a few little bubbles there, but I'm gonna have to do it again after this as well. So I have my little silicone stir stick here. So this is about where the trees are gonna go up to. So I actually wanna do a line of this along there because I wanna have a little bit of a glow behind the trees. And I found the best way to do this was with pouring it or using the stick to pour it. If I was to pour it, I wouldn't have as much control over the amount that went down there. And then I'm going to start, oops. And if something like that happens, don't worry about it. We will be able to spread it around a little bit. And if you want, you can look at some Northern Lights pictures before doing this so that you kind of see how they move in the sky. This is going to spread a bit from where it already is. And that's what we want. And I want some areas that are a bit thicker, some areas that are thinner. And I want it to go wider in some areas and thinner in others. And you can probably already see that it is spread a little bit, which is exactly what I'm wanting. It will spread a tiny bit more when I go and use my heat gun. Almost looks like a green tree. The last little bit in the cup, I'm just gonna pour it over here. Like I said, I want a bit of a glow behind the trees. Some of this you're not gonna see, some of it you are. There we go, keep that close by. Now I'm gonna pop the bubbles. And I'm keeping the heat gun on it to spread it just a tiny bit. I don't want it spread a lot, but I do want to spread it a little bit. I want it to have soft edges to it. And if there's something that you want to move around a little bit, take your stir stick here and use that to help manipulate it. Because we've had the heat gun on it, it's quite liquid, so it moves around quite easily. So just like the last layer, I'm gonna watch for the first half an hour or so, just to make sure that any bubbles that rise to the surface get removed. But other than that, I'm gonna leave it like that to dry. And to cure, sorry, to cure. So we'll see you tomorrow when we start with the next layer.